What happens when Hollywood's most respected actor faces off against a late-night host who's completely lost control? It only took 38 seconds of Jimmy Kimmel's most shocking comments to destroy years of professional reputation and send Harrison Ford storming off his own show. This is the untold story of the most explosive talk show meltdown ever caught on camera. The studio lights were blazing hot that Tuesday night. Harrison Ford walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel live stage, wearing his signature leather jacket, that familiar half-smile playing across his weathered face. The audience erupted in applause. They loved him, always had. From Han Solo to Indiana Jones, this man had given them decades of unforgettable memories. Jimmy Kimmel bounced out from behind his desk with that overly enthusiastic energy he was known for. But something felt different tonight. There was an edge in his voice, a sharpness in his movements that the cameras picked up immediately. "Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Harrison Ford," Kimmel shouted, his arms spread wide like he was announcing a circus act. Ford gave a polite wave to the crowd and settled into the guest chair. He adjusted his jacket, crossed one leg over the other, and waited for the applause to die down. This was routine for him. He'd done this dance 1,000 times before. "Harrison, great to have you back," Kimmel said, sliding behind his desk. "You look fantastic for a guy who's, pushing 80 now?" The audience chuckled nervously. Ford's smile tightened just a fraction. 79, actually. Right, 79. Still flying planes at 79. That's either really impressive or really concerning, Kimmel said with a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ford shifted in his chair. "Well, I've been flying for over 50 years. I think I know what I'm doing." "Do you, though?" Kimmel asked, his tone shifting. "I mean, you've had a few incidents, haven't you?" The studio fell silent. Even the camera operator seemed to sense the tension building. Ford's jaw clenched slightly, but he kept his voice steady. "I've had some mechanical issues over the years. That's part of flying." "Mechanical issues," Kimmel repeated, making air quotes with his fingers. "Is that what we're calling it when you nearly take out a passenger jet at John Wayne Airport?" Ford's eyes narrowed. "That was investigated thoroughly. There was no danger to anyone." "No danger?" Kimmel leaned forward, his voice getting louder. "You landed on a taxiway with a Boeing 737 coming right at you. The FAA said you could have killed hundreds of people." "That's not accurate," Ford replied, his voice calm but firm. "And frankly, I don't think this is appropriate dinner conversation, let alone television." Kimmel laughed, but it was cold now, mean. "Oh, I'm sorry. Are we making the movie star uncomfortable? Should we talk about something safer? Like how you hate doing interviews and basically phone in every promotional appearance?" The audience was dead quiet now. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the soft whir of the cameras. Ford sat perfectly still, his hands resting on the arms of his chair. "I show up and do my job," Ford said quietly. "That's what professionals do." "Professionals?" Kimmel's voice cracked with fake surprise. "Is that what you call mumbling through interviews like you'd rather be anywhere else on Earth? Because I've got to tell you, Harrison, watching you promote your movies is like watching someone get a root canal." Ford's face was stone now. "I'm here, aren't I?" "Yeah, you're here. Barely. I mean, look at you right now. You look like you're planning your escape route." Kimmel gestured wildly at Ford, who sat motionless in his chair. "Maybe because you're being incredibly rude to a guest on your show," Ford said, his voice low and dangerous. "Rude?" Kimmel stood up now, pacing behind his desk. "I'm being honest. Something nobody else will be with you anymore because you're Harrison Ford and everyone's afraid to tell you the truth." The cameras captured everything. Ford's hands gripping the chair arms, the nervous energy radiating from Kimmel, the stunned faces in the audience. "And what truth is that?" Ford asked. "That you've been sleepwalking through your career for the last 20 years? That you show up, collect your paycheck, and give audiences the bare minimum? That the Harrison Ford we all fell in love with died somewhere around the time you started demanding they kill off Han Solo because you couldn't be bothered to do another Star Wars movie?" The words hung in the air like poison gas. Ford stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. He looked at Kimmel for a long moment, then at the audience, then back at Kimmel. "You know what, Jimmy?" Ford's voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire studio. "I've been doing this for almost 50 years. I've worked with some of the greatest directors in Hollywood history. I've brought characters to life that people still love decades later. And in all that time, through hundreds of interviews and talk show appearances, nobody has ever been as unprofessional and disrespectful as you're being right now." Kimmel's face flushed red. "Unprofessional? I'm asking you real questions instead of lobbing softballs about your latest movie. Maybe you're just not used to that. There's a difference between tough questions and being deliberately insulting," Ford replied. You crossed that line about 5 minutes ago." The studio audience was frozen. Some people had their phones out, recording what was clearly becoming television history. Others sat with their hands over their mouths, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The producers in the control booth were frantically talking into their headsets, but nobody seemed to know how to stop what was happening. Kimmel walked around his desk, getting closer to Ford. "Oh, I crossed a line? What line is that, Harrison? The line where we pretend you actually care about the movies you make? The line where we act like you're not just cashing checks at this point?" Ford took a step back, not out of fear, but to maintain distance. "You don't know anything about me or my work." "I know plenty," Kimmel shot back. "I know you spent years begging George Lucas to kill Han Solo because you were bored with the character. I know you've given interviews where you can't even remember the names of movies you've been in. I know you charge millions of dollars to show up and look miserable for 2 hours. You're talking about things you don't understand," Ford said, his voice getting harder. "Han Solo's death served the story. It gave weight to the new trilogy. It meant something. It meant you got to leave early," Kimmel sneered. "Just like you're probably planning to leave early tonight. How long before you start checking your watch and making excuses about having to catch a flight?" Ford's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I've never walked out of an interview in my entire career. There's a first time for everything," Kimmel said with a nasty grin. The audience gasped. Several people stood up. Whether to leave or get a better view, nobody could tell. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the meltdown. "What is wrong with you?" Ford asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Why are you doing this?" "Because somebody needs to," Kimmel replied, his voice rising again. "Somebody needs to call out the fact that Harrison Ford doesn't want to be Harrison Ford anymore. You hate your fans, you hate your movies, you hate talking about your work. So why should we pretend to be excited when you show up?" "I don't hate my fans," Ford said firmly. "I've always been grateful for their support." "Grateful? You avoid them like they have the plague. You hide behind sunglasses and bodyguards. You give one-word answers to questions about characters people have loved their entire lives. That's not grateful, Harrison. That's contemptuous." Ford was quiet for a moment, staring at Kimmel like he was seeing him for the first time. "You really believe this, don't you? You actually think this is who I am?" "I think this is who you've become," Kimmel said, "and I think deep down you know it too. That's why you're getting so angry." "I'm not angry," Ford said calmly. "I'm disappointed. I came here tonight as a guest on your show. I came here to talk about my work, to connect with people who might enjoy the film I've made. Instead, I'm being attacked by someone who clearly has some kind of personal issue with me." Kimmel laughed bitterly. "Personal issue? I don't have a personal issue with you, Harrison. I have a professional issue with you. You've been phoning it in for so long that you've forgotten what actual effort looks like." "Phoning it in?" Ford's voice rose slightly for the first time. "Do you have any idea what goes into making a movie? The months of preparation, the physical demands, the emotional investment? Do you think I just show up and wing it? Based on some of your recent performances, yeah, kind of," Kimmel replied. The insult landed like a physical blow. Ford went completely still, his face pale. The audience was now openly uncomfortable, with some people getting up to leave. The producers were probably having heart attacks in the control room. "You know what?" Ford said quietly. "I think we're done here." "We're done when I say we're done," Kimmel snapped. "You're on my show, remember? You don't get to decide when the interview ends." Ford looked at him with something approaching pity. "Actually, I do. I'm a guest, not a prisoner. And I don't have to sit here and listen to you insult me for your audience's entertainment." "So that's it?" Kimmel called after him as Ford started to turn away. "You're just gonna run away? Just like you always do when things get uncomfortable?" Ford stopped. He turned back slowly, and for a moment, everyone in that studio thought he might actually lose his temper. Instead, his voice was deadly calm. "I'm not running away from anything. I'm walking away from you. There's a difference." Ford looked directly into the main camera. "To anyone watching this, I want you to know that this isn't what I expected when I agreed to come on this show tonight. This isn't professional. This isn't entertainment. This is just sad." Kimmel's face went red. "Oh, now you want to address the audience? Now you want to connect with people? Where was this energy for the first 10 minutes of the interview when I was trying to have an actual conversation with you?" "You call this an actual conversation?" Ford gestured between them. "You've spent the entire time attacking my character, my work, and my professionalism. That's not a conversation, Jimmy. That's an ambush." The word ambush seemed to flip a switch in Kimmel's brain. His face twisted with rage, and whatever filter he'd been using completely disappeared. The audience could sense something terrible was about to happen. "Ambush?" Kimmel screamed, his voice cracking. "You want to talk about ambushes? How about ambushing your co-stars with your attitude? How about ambushing directors who are trying to work with you while you stand there looking like you'd rather be dead? Ford's eyes went wide. He'd clearly never seen anything like this before. Jimmy, you need to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. Kimmel was pacing now, gesticulating wildly. I've been calm for years while watching you destroy every interview you do. While watching you treat fans like they're bothering you just by existing. While watching you take roles in movies and then act like you're too good for them. That's enough, Ford said firmly. But Kimmel wasn't listening anymore. You know what your problem is, Harrison? You think you're better than everyone else. You think because you played some iconic characters 30 years ago, that gives you the right to be miserable and make everyone around you miserable too. The audience was now openly booing Kimmel, but he couldn't hear them over his own voice. Security guards were moving closer to the stage, unsure of what to do. I've met a lot of actors over the years, Ford said, his voice cutting through Kimmel's rant. Good ones, bad ones, professional ones, difficult ones. But I've never met anyone quite like you. Like what? Kimmel demanded. Someone who uses their platform to tear people down instead of building them up. Someone who thinks cruelty is the same thing as honesty. Kimmel's laugh was unhinged now. Cruelty? You want to see cruelty? Cruelty is charging $20 million to sleepwalk through a movie. Cruelty is making fans wait in line for hours just to get a grunt and a signature. Cruelty is taking jobs away from actors who would actually appreciate them. You're embarrassing yourself, Ford said quietly. I'm embarrassing myself? Kimmel's voice went even higher. You're the one who's been embarrassing yourself for decades. You're like a zombie version of Harrison Ford, just going through the motions until you can finally retire and never have to pretend to care again. That was it. Ford had heard enough. He started walking toward the stage exit, but Kimmel wasn't done. That's right, run away. Just like Han Solo running from his responsibilities. Just like Indiana Jones running from the Nazis. Except this time, you're running from the truth. Ford stopped dead in his tracks. The comparison to his characters, the ones millions of people loved, being twisted into insults was the final straw. He turned around one last time, and when he spoke, his voice was ice cold. You know what the difference is between Han Solo and you, Jimmy? Han Solo was a hero who pretended to be selfish. You're selfish, pretending to be a hero. Han Solo cared about his friends. You're attacking yours. Friends? Kimmel sputtered. We're not friends. We barely know each other. Exactly, Ford said, which makes this whole thing even more pathetic. You're destroying your own reputation, your own show, your own credibility to attack someone you don't even know. And for what? A few viral clips? Some social media buzz? The audience was on their feet now, some clapping for Ford, others just trying to get out of the studio. The whole thing had become a complete disaster. At least I still have a reputation to destroy, Kimmel shot back. But his voice was weaker now. Even he seemed to realize he'd gone too far. Ford looked at him with something that might have been pity. You had a reputation. Past tense. Because after tonight, every guest who comes on this show is going to wonder if they're going to get an interview or an execution. He walked over to where a stagehand was standing, removed his wireless microphone, and handed it over. Then he looked back at Kimmel one final time. I've been in this business for almost 50 years. I've seen careers rise and fall. I've seen talented people destroy themselves and mediocre people rise to the top. But I've never seen someone work so hard to torpedo their own success. Ford paused, shaking his head. Whatever your problem is, Jimmy, it's not with me. It's with yourself. And taking it out on your guests isn't going to fix it. Kimmel stood there, breathing hard, his face red and sweaty. The studio was mostly empty now, with only a few audience members left, and they were all staring at him with a mixture of shock and disgust. This interview is over, Ford announced, his voice carrying across the now nearly silent studio. And I think everyone here knows why. He walked off the stage with the same quiet dignity he'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. Behind him, Kimmel was left standing alone next to his desk, the camera still rolling, capturing every second of his public meltdown. The man who had started the evening as a successful talk show host had ended it as something else entirely. And Harrison Ford, the professional who had simply come to promote his latest film, had shown everyone watching exactly what grace under pressure looked like. The studio lights kept blazing, but the show was over. In more ways than one.